Earlier this week, we learned that former players such as Alex Popham, Michael Lippmann and 2003 World Cup winner Steve Thompson were planning to launch a legal action for negligence against World Rugby, the RFU and the WRU over the effects of concussion. Thompson gave a couple of interviews in which he stated that he had early onset dementia and as a result of his head injuries sustained playing the game, and that he cannot remember any of England's World Cup win in Australia back in 2003. Ian, imagine to have such an event, like such an occasion like a Rugby World Cup, and not even be able to remember it.
Yeah, it was very scary reading, and I think hearing the background to it and the thought process behind it from the medical advice he'd been getting, that it was almost like the film had been taken out of the video recorder was how it was described. It's very scary, and I think obviously we've seen it with the NFL over the last probably 10 years. The different movies coming out about CTE and the big lawsuit that they've had over there. So it is scary when it's happening in our own game. One of the positives from it is that they're not just looking for a lawsuit and financial benefits from it. They're looking at ways to improve the game going forward. We're not going to suddenly stop playing rugby off the back of what's come out, but there's definitely improvements to be made in both the HIA protocol and everything from the levels of contact in training to even how many games players are playing within a season.
Yeah, so in relation to the HIA protocols, like what's your protocol with a concussion or with like contact in training? Would you do a lot of contact in training to minimise those concussion risks?
Yeah, it's definitely decreased as my years as a professional has gone on. We're probably doing more pad work in training as opposed to body on body full contact. They talk about different levels within training. So level 1 would be just grab. That it wouldn't be full contact. If someone gets 2 hands on you, you have to stop. Level 2 would be shoulders on. You have to stop the players dead. If you can run through it, you can, and it's play on. And then level 3 is full contact. It's no holds barred, and you go as hard as you can. And I think it varies as well from club to club. Obviously I've had the pleasure of playing in 4 different clubs, and the levels of contact in each of those clubs will be different within a training week. And I think coaches can be reactionary, off the back of a poor defensive or a poor physical performance during the week. The following week could have far more physical contact to try and, improve our defense or improve our level of physicality. And I think there probably has to be some consistency brought in around that area. It can't be reactionary every week to the performance. At the end of the day, bodies and brains have to recover. You mightn't necessarily have been concussed in a game at the weekend, but you might have had a lot of contacts, and your body and your brain has to recover in the week from game to game.
Like if you think about it, even if you don't actually get a direct blow to the head, like every time you get a contact, your head is ricocheting backwards, or if you're knocked to the ground, there is whiplash of some sort in that tackle. So even if you don't feel yourself that you were diagnosed with a concussion, essentially, you are still getting minor blows throughout the game. And I think there was some stat done that in the 1993 World Cup, the average tackles per game was like 50 something. And in the 2019 World Cup, the average tackles per game was 200 or over 200. So the amount of tackles, like that's an awful amount of hits. That's an awful amount of opportunities for your head and your brain especially to be under pressure.
Yeah, certainly. And, we've spoken on the show before about, like, I'm passionate about it because I'm at the receiving end of a lot of it is the pre-latching going into contact. I think I saw a tweet by Rory O'Connor there over the weekend, and it was 2 of the French players pre-latching. One of them was 120 kilos and one of them was 140 kilos. And, that's 260 kilos going down someone who might only be 80 or 90 kilos. That's regardless of whether that impact is directly on the head. It's a huge amount of force going through your body. And I think that's definitely something that they can look at. Now, I know there's a different side to it, and we had Nigel coming on and talking about defenders doubling up on the attacking player, and that's just as much 2v1. And I'll be honest, I don't know if I know the solution to that. At the end of the day, it is a full contact sport.
Yeah, I think like even ourselves in our defensive structure, we are taught one high, one low. Like if you don't do a two-man tackle, you're penalised. Like you get the balls given away, or you go back 10, or the other team get an advantage. But like we are taught in training, our defensive system is get out, fill 10, 20, 30, and after that we're up in a straight line, and it's two against one. And then obviously you need a pre-latch because it's 2v1, and then now as a result you've got your two latches and your two defenders, and it's 2 against 2. The force in that contact is instantly so much further. The knock back to the ground is so much further. The hit is so much harder because you have like 200 kg against 200 kg. It's a car crash.
Yeah, no, certainly, and like there has been really positive changes even in the last 6 months. Where referees are defending any direct shoulder contact to the head. If there's a reasonable amount of force behind it, it's now a red card. If it's less amount of force, it's a yellow card. And off the back of that, you then get defensive coaches or tackling coaches, or skills coaches as such. You do get them stepping up, and you'll spend all week. If a team has lost the game off the back of a red card the week before because of bad tackle technique, then you're going to spend the following week working on dropping your body height, making sure that shoulders aren't going into, necks or chins or heads. And how the game is officiated is a large part of that. And I think even for the attacking player now, like we've seen a good few times a player leading with the elbow, once the elbow comes away from the body and makes contact with the neck or the head. Because, a lot of the concussions are from, there is ones obviously from hitting players' hips, but a lot of them come from elbow straight on the head. It's a very strong part of the body. It's sharp, and if you get that on the side of the head, there's a good chance you could well be knocked out. And I think how referees officiate the game going forward, it's very hard, at fast pace. But you've got the 2 touch judges there to help you out. You've got the TMO there. And I think that's something that as players, we've got to be more welcoming to. There's got to be pauses in matches. If someone does lead with the arm or a shoulder comes in on the head, that there's going to be pauses. It needs to be slowed down. It needs to be looked at, because at the end of the day, player welfare has to be paramount.
I think there's 2 sides to it there. There is obviously how it's refereed, but also there needs to be a look at the laws. And I suppose if the laws are there, they will be refereed well. And in the past since that World Cup in 2019, they've been really, really strict on high tackles, especially around the neck, thankfully. Obviously, Bundyaki was on the wrong side with that, but it was an example, and they've continued on with those laws. However, I think the World Rugby brought it in and trialled it in France, in some French clubs, in the French club league. They trialled these new laws in relation to concussion and tackling, and I think it was they must tackle below the knees. I think it was below the hips or knees, and it had to be below there. And it significantly reduced the amount of concussions. Like, is that something that they need to look at?
Yeah, like there are studies like that done, but there's also a number of concussions that are unavoidable. So like when you have 2 defenders coming in, tackling an individual player, and the 2 defending players meet on the opposite side and the heads collide, like some of the worst concussions I've seen have been players knocking themselves out by their own player. That's very hard to avoid. You come in really hard and you catch someone's hip, which is obviously an incredibly strong part of the body. There's a good chance you could well be knocked out. But I think as well, tied into it, and probably one of the criticisms I'd have with the HIA protocol is that you can be knocked out on a Saturday, follow the HIA protocol, and pass all the tests throughout the week, and then you're available to play the following Saturday. I think they should probably look at, if you are knocked out or you fail a HIA, that it's an automatic miss a game for a week. So at least then you've got minimum kind of 12 days to recover. I'm not too sure with what protocols, if they're similar for you.
Yeah, like there's obviously amateur and professional protocols in our game. So depending on who I'm playing with, it'd be, if I'm in with Ireland, it's a 7-day protocol. And if I'm back at my club or with Munster, it's a 21-day protocol, because we're amateurs essentially. But like your brain doesn't know the difference between, I'm an amateur and I'm a professional today. You walk into a field, your brain is the same whether you're an amateur or not, So why the rules? I know you're monitored daily in a professional setup, and I think that's the reason why, is that there's more tests, there's more trials, there's more steps of your return to play protocol. along the way. But like, even if you did bring in that there about missing a game, like, I know as a player, I don't want to miss a game. So I'm going to tell. The thing with concussion is it's so internal, and to me, to the outside, I look fine and I can just say I'm fine. And I don't know if you've any experience with concussions, but I know myself, you think you're fine until you start to run, and then you've got headaches and you have to go back a stage again. And then you think you're fine, you go to the gym, you've gone past your running stage and you're like, great, I got through that run, and you're on to your gym session, and then you're back to square one again. And it's day by day and it's so slow. But I feel like if you missed a game, the physio's not going to know how you feel. The doctor's not going to know how you feel. It's really you are the only person who knows how you feel. And bringing in something like that might encourage you to play when you're actually not ready to play. And the protocols are in place, and I think I'm glad they're in place. I'm glad that there is a doctor pitch side who is really, they're looking at them and they're whipping you off the field as quick as you can and taking the decision out of your hands. If they think you need a HIA, you're coming off and you're spending 10 minutes out there doing a HIA regardless whether you want to or not. I think I'm glad the concussion protocols are there, but there's just so much around it. I think the hard thing with concussion is nobody can see it. It's not like a broken leg or a broken arm or anything like that.
Yeah, certainly. Like I've been lucky throughout my career. I actually haven't had any concussions. Hopefully a bit of luck, and I don't know, maybe not getting involved in too much contact. Yeah, exactly. Maybe it's my small brain not getting rattled around, or my big head protecting me. But yeah, I, as you said there, like, concussion is a very kind of personal thing. You can't see it. It's not a broken bone. It's not a torn muscle. And you've kind of touched on it there, and I've seen it through my career where players are trying to come back and they have a few good days, and then they do, a more exertive session, and a faint headache comes up. And if that's, 3 weeks down the line, 3 months down the line, they nearly start thinking, is this headache just something that I'm thinking about? Am I actually getting a headache? It's a very kind of torturous process. And I think there's definitely work to be done on the honesty of players with the medics. I've been blessed in the last few years, and even in my time in France, the medical teams were very hot on it. In Bristol, they were very hot on it, and similar in Ulster. But regardless of how good the medical team is, you're still going to have nasty concussions. And even in my time in Bristol, unfortunately, Will Hurrell, who's now retired, he had a bad head injury when he played Leicester in the Gallagher Premiership, and he unfortunately had a stroke-induced concussion. Now, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not exactly sure, so I don't want to put my foot in it, but the side effects of that were very serious for him. His speech was badly affected, memory loss, to the extent that he could get lost in a situation that he'd normally be very comfortable in. So that was very tough for the everyone involved, and seeing what he was going through. But it's very hard to find direct answers to the concussion within the game.
Yeah. Do you see rugby as a dangerous game? Like, we're still playing it. You and I are still both playing it. Like, is our game dangerous?
Yeah, it is a dangerous game, but we knew what we were getting into. Maybe we didn't know all the side effects that are there and that we're seeing now, especially on a week like this. But the biggest thing for me is looking forward. What improvements can be made? We're still going to have concussions, but can we ensure that the player doesn't return too soon? Can we reduce the amount of concussions that we're having? And I think the severity of them as well, and I think you'll get that with improved tackle technique, strict refereeing. But no, it's a tough week, and I'm sure parents are listening into our show here and reading those articles, and they might be deciding what sport to send their son or daughter down. And off the back of reading those articles, you might think, oh, maybe let's send them to the local GAA club or the local soccer club. But I think as well, you can forget the positives within our game as well. It's fantastic sport, both physically to exert yourself, the camaraderie within the game, that you mightn't necessarily get from non-contact sports.
Yeah, I think there's risks involved in everything you do. It's not just a rugby field. I personally have had more concussions playing Gaelic football than I have had in rugby. So maybe that tells like you if I'm just avoiding rucks or what. But like I honestly have had more in Gaelic football. So, it's not just about our game. It's about, how you play the game. It's about how the game is reffed, and it's about the laws of the game. But the one good thing I think from this lawsuit is the education of players. Like, we now know that, okay, I'm not going to return after 7 days because I don't feel right. And you know why? Well, it's because my long-term health is much more important than any game that I play on Saturday. And I think that's the one positive here, is that there's so many neurological effects of concussion. And, dementia is just one of those, but there's headaches, there's depression, there's mood swings, it's chronic fatigue, these symptoms that people are talking about now. And we've seen it quite a lot in the NFL, and we've seen a lot of those NFL players, quite a high incidence of suicide in there as well due to depression rates because of traumatic brain injuries. So if one thing good comes from this, it's that, someone might think twice about stepping back onto the field if they still have concussion symptoms. And I think our game is dangerous. I think a lot of games come with a risk, and I wouldn't urge parents to get turned off rugby as a result of this. I think there's a risk in every game.
Certainly, yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head there.
House of Rugby Ireland, here on Joe, together with Guinness. Game changed.